Right, this is on. All right. Okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit about where we've been and where we're going with flight service. We've made a lot of changes over the years, and we're going to get into all the new features that we have. And like it says, we are definitely not the flight service you once knew. And we're going to talk about that. The pilot web, we've created a pilot web, and we're also interfaced now with third-party vendors, app vendors like ForeFlight and Navigator, and we'll get into that too. But those are the two areas we're going to focus in on today. All right, so like I said, the first thing we did is we created a website, and the website address is the same as the telephone number, 1-800-WXBrief.com. We rolled this out in 2012, and the membership and the people logging in and getting accounts is just growing incredibly. The benefits, and we're going to touch on all of these things as we go through, but I just wanted to point out that this is a free service that we offer. We implemented it to service the pilot community, period. It is a legal briefing. The FAA recognizes it as a briefing, as if you were calling in service and getting a briefing and filing a flight plan there.
Is this presentation, will it be available on your website?
It is not available on our website. If you want more details and there's something that you need covered more, stop over to hangar. It's hangar C. I think it's booth 14, C14. Okay. And we record everything, just like a verbal briefing is recorded. That's for your protection, not ours. It's for your protection. We go into the flight plans that you file and the briefings that you get are the same as if you're talking to a flight service station specialist. And when you file into our system or on the pilot web, it goes directly into the FlightScape system or flight service system. Specialists have it immediately and they can service you. We're going to talk about next generation briefings, and we have an adverse condition alerting service. We will start pushing you alerts rather than you having to call in to get any adverse conditions. We have things like easy activate and easy close for VFR flight plans, and we'll get into that as we're going through this presentation. This is the pilot web login page. Up top here is the landing page. And then when you hit this is when you type in 1-800-WXBrief.com, this is where you go. You hit the login button, and it brings us to a login page. If you already have an account, you simply log in, and it brings you to our pilot web. If you don't have an account, you just type in this, or you hit this link right here. It asks you a couple basic questions, and you're off and on your way. The good thing is, if you call flight service now and they recognize who you are, that means you have a profile in our system already. When you sign up for a pilot web account, it will link or marry those two accounts together. So if you have aircraft that are already stored in our system, it'll be brought to this pilot web account as well. So you don't have to re-enter all your aircraft information or your personal information. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about web services. We consciously, everybody's asking us, how, do you have an app for this? And the answer is no. We consciously made a decision not to create apps. There are a multitude of app vendors out there that are well entrenched in this market area, and we decided not to do that. So what we did do is gave those third-party app vendors the ability to file flight plans through us and request briefings from us. So when you file on, you'll see all the vendors up there with green check marks. Those are the ones that are actively taking it, that can submit flight plans and request briefings from us. The ones that are yellow on the left-hand side there are the ones that we're actively testing with in our labs right now. So let's take Navigator, for example. They can file flight plans into our system, and when they do, they're immediately available to our specialists. So if you file using Navigator and call 10 seconds later, our flight service station specialists have that information. Same thing with the other green checkmarked vendors. It's a free interface for the third-party vendors. We don't charge them anything. We just, the whole purpose is to service the pilots. On the right-hand side there, you'll see position reporting device vendors. I think we've all heard of those, and what they do is they provide position reports when you're flying along. If you give, say, DeLorme permission, they will send us those position reports. And if you have an active flight plan, VFR flight plan in our system, we will monitor your flight under the covers. We're not ATC, and we're not doing flight following, but we'll monitor your flight under the covers. If for some reason we stop receiving a report, we will start or initiate a search and rescue event right then and there. How long does it take normally to start a search and rescue? 20, 30 minutes after arrival time, right? And we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail here. Any questions on the third-party app vendors before I move on?
If you hold your questions before the reach the mic, appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so why did we build Pilot Web, and why did we give third-party app vendors the ability to come to us? It was because you guys were complaining. I filed my flight plan, I call flight service, you guys don't have my flight plan. Well, there were certain limitations to that. If you're filing your flight plan on another site, they don't send us the flight plans until an hour prior to departure time. So you call 3 hours out to get an updated briefing, we don't have that flight plan yet. So now we're asking you to give us all that information, and you're frustrated. If it's an IFR flight plan, we don't even get those flight plans. They go directly into center from that other company. So what we did was we built a Pilot Web. We built the ability for app vendors to come into our system. If we haven't, when you file IFR flight plans, they come into our system. We forward it off to the appropriate air traffic control facility. If it's a VFR flight plan, we hold it and we own it. So when you call to activate it, everything's good. So that's the benefit, and that's why, that was the primary reason for us building a Pilot Web. Okay. All right. So after we built that, we said, okay, what's the next thing to tackle? Thanks. I used to fly out of South Jersey. I used to go up to Northeast there. I used to go into Islip a lot. I mean, we're talking, 150, 200 miles. And I used to get a briefing, and it would be 75 pages long. I can go 20 miles and get a 50-page briefing. And we thought, that's ridiculous. And it's because we're working with 20-year-old technology. Everything that we're building on, and we have built on for the past 20 years, is the same information, just getting more voluminous, just more and more and more. So how do you take all that information and present it to the pilots in such a way that it makes it easier to understand the conditions you're going to be flying through? And that was our goal. That was our mission. And I think we did a pretty good job. And like I said, if you come over to Hangar C, we'll demo the website. I'm not going to go into all of the features because we're going to touch on all of those. This is our initial, this is a METAR, the METAR page. And before I go into any of the features and things, you'll see across the top here, this is what a briefing looks like. This is what's returned. When you request a briefing, this is the layout and the format. You'll see that we have it it's in tab format. So you click on a tab and it brings you to that particular condition or data. What I did was, for this one, this is the METAR page. This is the first page you come to when you click on the METAR page. You can see we have all of our METARs here. They're just listed down the left-hand side, and that's what we're all used to, right? But on the right-hand side here, we have a graphical representation of what those METARs look like. This is a flight from Pittsburgh over to Atlantic City, and you can see you have a front moving off the coast. We color code the stations for you, VFR, marginal VFR, IFR, and so on. Low IFR is the other one. And we have two tabs up here, next gen and standard. This is what we call the next generation tab. This is the improvement. If you want to see just a dump of the data, go back to the standard tab. I've been doing this now for a couple of years, and I have never gone back to the standard tab. Never. And if you want to see this, we've added a plain text briefing button. We'll turn everything into plain text for you if you want. Okay, so this gives you an overview of your flight from point A, from Pittsburgh over to Atlantic City. This is good, but it's not good enough. What happens when you call flight service and you get a briefing? They don't read off every METAR station, right? They summarize everything along the route of flight for you. And that's exactly what our software does for you. Okay. I didn't touch that button, I swear. There we go. Okay, so what we've done is we've summarized for you. And this is not the presentation that you get in the pilot web. This was just a conglomerate. We just consolidated what you would see. So like a specialist, what we've done in software is we take the departure station and we decode it for you and we tell you what that station is. What a specialist will do is give you a grouping of METARs and summarize it. Mostly VFR with some marginal through Lancaster and so on and so forth. And we highlight the worst condition in that grouping. So you know what you're in for in that group of METARs. The next grouping, IFR and marginal through South Jersey Regional. And again, we highlight what the worst condition is in that grouping. And the last thing we do is we give you your destination station. So now I've taken 25 METARs and I've given you 4 sentences to read. I mean, specialists are trained. They look at those METARs. They've gone through so much training. They just know how to summarize at a glance. Me as a pilot, I can't. So when this helps me a tremendous amount. Okay. Another big one, the TAF. There's a lot of information in a TAF, and it's very good information. And I'll speak for myself. I can do it. But the trick is, how do I know which forecast time period I'm going to be in as I'm passing that station, especially in a long flight? Specialists, again, trained, highly trained. They know exactly where they're supposed to be looking. Me as a pilot, it takes me time to figure that out. So what we did is we calculated the passing time as you're going down your route of flight. And we will tell you, based on your departure time, based on your aircraft characteristics, and based on the winds aloft, we will calculate that you're going to be passing through Wilmington at 2020Z, passing Philly at 2030Z. And what we do is we highlight that forecast time period, and we tell you exactly what that condition is. Now, this is great, but you look over here and we give you a graphical representation of what those METAR stations look like. And you say, oh, why do I have 3 colors on Philly? Well, like a specialist, there's 3 different conditions that come into play when you're passing Philadelphia, potentially. The center color represents at passing time, it's going to be marginal. If you happen to get there up to an hour prior and there's a different condition, the specialist must give that to you, and that's what we're doing here. If you get there an hour early, we're telling you that you'll be in IFR conditions. If you happen to get there an hour late, you'll now be in VFR conditions. So based on that front that was coming through that you saw before, you know that this flight probably will be delayed if you're a VFR pilot. And the other, one of the other graphics that we like is PIREPs. PIREPs are good. There's a lot of information here. We highlight the ones that are urgent, but unless you're really in tune and know every airport and navigate in your area, it's hard to visualize exactly where that PIREP may be. So we graph it for you. You look at this route of flight here and you say, well, you know, that's an urgent PIREP, and that's right on my route of flight, something I want to pay attention to. Again, it just draws your attention to that you have an urgent PIREP sitting there. And we also put PIREPs outside of your route of flight just to give you an idea of what the conditions are like around that area, around your route. Another thing we took the time to do was time analysis, and we automatically do this for you. This happens to be a picture of a flight from inside the SFRA down to Charlotte. What we do is, and this, we graph the TFR for you, and see all these conditions up here: TFR, AIRMET, SIGMET, convective SIGMET, CWA, and severe weather. We do this for all of those types of conditions. This one happens to be a TFR. We tell you when you're going to enter that TFR, and we tell you when you're going to exit that TFR. And the other thing we do is we color code it red, orange, or green. Red means that that TFR is going to be active at the time you're proposed to go to depart. If it were, well, this one's always going to be red because it's the DC TFR. If it's orange, it means it's going to be active within an hour of your proposed departure time. And again, we use aircraft characteristics and winds aloft to determine your time en route and where you're going to be. And if it's green, it means that particular event is not going to affect your flight because it's outside of an hour of your proposed penetration time. So again, we take what that element is, what we're reporting on, and there's the text. We graph it for you, and you can overlay. This has obviously composite reflectivity on it, composite radar. And then we tell you everything you need to know right in here. At a glance, you know it's red, it's going to be active when I'm flying. Smart plain text translation. Plain text is great, but why do I need to have the fixed radials put in plain text? I mean, it doesn't help me any more than looking at the radials themselves. So what we do is we only decode what's important, and we draw where that particular phenomenon is. This is an AIRMET. So rather than give you a plain text translation of this area, we draw it for you, overlay it on your route. We tell you when you're going to enter it, we tell you when you're going to exit it. But the point here is we extract the data that's embedded in here, and we pull it out and put it up in this summarized box up there. Again, we're not trying to take the thinking out of doing this. We're just trying to make it easier for the pilots to assimilate this information. That's all. At a glance, I know that that AIRMET's going to be active when I'm proposed to fly. Filtering. One of the biggest complaints we get is I'm flying 100 miles and I have an area forecast that covers 6 or 7 states when I'm not leaving Virginia, or I'm going from Virginia into North Carolina. I did this flight a lot. My son went to Blacksburg, and we used to go over to Lynchburg and do some flying. We used to fly out of Blacksburg. What's unique about this particular flight? The departure is in the northeast area, and the destination is in the southeast area, right? Okay, what am I going to get now? I'm going to get an area forecast from where to where? Maine to Florida. Not very helpful. I don't need anything. I don't need to know about Georgia. I don't need to know about Maine. I don't need to know about Pennsylvania. So what we do is by the area and by the state that the National Weather Service gives us, the areas, that's all we display. And when you click the next button, you'll see the next button up here, right up here. And I apologize for not going over the layout as much as I should, but I'd rather show you the features of what we're doing. And if you want details, please come over and we'll be happy to give you the layout and everything. Now, if I click this next button here, it brings it to the next area or the next state. It's whatever, like I said, it's whatever the National Weather Service gives. We can't go in and parse out anything more granular than what they give us. And that's it. Now, if you really want to know all of the other states and all of the other areas, go back to the standard button and you'll see the list of forecasts from Maine down to Florida. obstruction NOTAMs, incredibly useful, but most of them are not needed, especially en route. I'm flying at 95 and I have obstructions at 3,000, or I have obstructions at 4,000. I don't need to see that information, but maybe you want to. We give you the ability to filter out what you don't want to see up to 1,000 feet of your filed altitude. If you click this button here, what we're going to do is filter out all the obstructions that are outside 1,000 feet or below 1,000 feet of your filed altitude. So if I click this button here, I get rid of everything that was black. Now I'm left with red and orange obstructions. If it's a red obstruction, it's within 500 feet of your filed altitude. If it's orange, it's within 1,000 feet of your filed altitude. Again, you want to see them all, deselect the filter button, and then you have everything at your fingertips. To me, this is much more useful. At least I know what to pay attention to now as I'm flying along. Nav NOTAMs. There's a lot of them. And if you're en route, I don't need ILS NOTAMs. I don't need TACAN NOTAMs because I'm not a military pilot. And I don't need NDB NOTAMs. So what I can do, you can go through and select the ones you don't want to see. And what it does, it removes them from your display. Again, you want to see them? Go back and you'll have access to them. Trying to give you the data you want to see versus us just dumping everything that's in the system. We're required to, but there's nothing that says we can't help you fine-tune what you're getting and what you need to know about. Okay, so those are some of the next generation briefing items that we've implemented. We've implemented a lot of things. These are highlights. We also put in some efficiency and safety enhancements. The first thing, or what pilots said, and that a good point, everything you see here is based on pilot feedback. I work with an incredibly talented group of engineers, and I'm an engineer, but engineers don't hear what pilots and the user community needs sometimes. And it's no fault of an engineer. We have a certain mindset. So what I do and the other pilots on the team is we sit and we draw up and design this stuff before it gets over to the engineers and they give it to us back. One of the things that we asked for was a Delta briefing. I just got a briefing 2 hours ago. I hit the briefing button. I got a whole briefing again. What we did is we created a tab. If any adverse conditions have been introduced since your last standard briefing, we'll tell them to you right up front. Now you have the ability to just go through and look at the adverse conditions that have popped up along your route of flight since your last standard briefing. You still have the entire briefing there, but that Delta tab gives you a quick look at any adverse conditions. This is our domestic flight plan template, standard stuff. What I'm going to touch on are three aspects, and these are the efficiency items: evaluate, optimize, and plan a route. And I threw up the ICAO flight plan template for good measure. Just going to throw this out there. Everybody knows October 1, the FAA has plans on going to all ICAO flight plans. Our website and our flight plan template is incredibly user-friendly. We have little help buttons here. You click on that and or you hover over any one of the titles and a dialog will pop up and it'll tell you what the format is for that particular field. If you click on the magnifying glass next to those fields, it'll tell you the different aircraft types. You can do searches. If the biggest complaint we get right now is the equipment field, surveillance field, and the other information field. People are, for some pilots, are deathly afraid of those fields because they don't match one for one with a NAS flight plan, a domestic flight plan. But I'm here to tell you that it is not difficult. Unless you have some incredibly sophisticated equipment on board, you're going to pick the normal standard stuff in that aircraft equipment field. Same thing with the surveillance equipment. You're going to pick your normal surveillance. If you happen to have ADS-B out, we have a checkbox for that. You can just check it. The other information field, we have help. You don't even have to know how to put all that information in. You just click on the buttons in there and you type in that data and we will format it for you automatically. Now, the good thing is, once you have a flight plan template filled out, if you save it as a favorite, you will never have to enter any of that information in again. It's there for you. Okay. Say it again.
Say it again, please.
The last sentence.
Yeah.
So I take the time and I fill this out, right?
Right.
There's a button up top there that says Save as Favorite. It saves everything in that flight plan, and I mean everything except departure time and date. We don't want to ever assume you're leaving the same time, and obviously you can't be flying the same date if you're bringing it up tomorrow. So we save everything for you, and that includes just the survival equipment. Just click what you want there, and you're good to go, and we save that for you. And again, we got guys in the booth that know this stuff like the back of their hands, and we have specialists over there. They'll be happy to run through this stuff. I talked about optimize. This is a quick glance. You pick an altitude. We picked one here for 95. Now, based on your route, obviously, and your aircraft characteristics and winds aloft, we give you a quick check of what your fuel burn is going to be at that altitude and how long it's going to take you en route. We also give you 2,000 feet and 4,000 feet above, 2,000 feet and 4,000 feet below. If you want to fly at a different altitude, you merely select the new altitude you want, hit select, and it brings it back into your flight plan mask.
This is an ICAO format, so if I'm going to fly to the Bahamas or somewhere down.
Hold on, I think he wants to come over with a microphone.
Yes, this is an ICAO format, so if I want to fly down to the Bahamas or go down there, will they automatically have my flight plan?
Yes, if you file a flight plan through Lockheed Martin Flight Service, if it's an IFR, ICAO flight plan, we will transmit, it depends, if you're departing the Bahamas or if you're departing us going to the Bahamas, we will transmit the flight plan to the appropriate air traffic control facility. And there's a certain format that we transmit flight plans around the NAS, the National Airspace System, and they will have exactly what we send them. All right? So again, this is just a quick altitude optimization tool. Departure planning. There's so many times you plan on leaving at, in this case, 5 o'clock, 05. That's morning time. I have everything set up here in Eastern time. And that's another thing. You can set up the default to be whatever you want, UTC, Zulu time or Pacific time or wherever you're located. Mine's Eastern. I'm up in Maryland. I fly out of Frederick. But instead of getting an entire briefing to figure out when I can, or even if that's a good time to go, we do it for you up front. I put in 5 o'clock, my departure date, my departure time, and I hit the evaluate button. So what that does is it calculates what the conditions are going to be along your route of flight from your departure down to your destination, and we'll give you 6 hours before, we'll give you 6 hours after. And we calculate everything, again, based on your aircraft characteristics and winds aloft. I'm really beating on aircraft characteristics because without that, a lot of this stuff is no good. Do a nav log without aircraft characteristics, and it's totally based on winds aloft. You guys know that. And what we do is, if I'm VFR, I know 5 o'clock I'm not leaving. I mean, I can just look at that and say, I'm not leaving. And these are all based on your terminal area forecast. So if you happen to go out, say, 2 days and try to do one of these plans, TAFs only go out 24 or 30 hours. So it will indicate that with the U down there that we don't know what that condition is yet. You're going to have to wait to submit another one, later on. Quick glance of what the conditions are along your route of flight. We added something called, you see those hash marks up there? That's telling you that you have an adverse condition, some type of adverse condition at that time. It could be a center weather advisory, all the things we talked about before, center weather advisory, TFR, could be a closed runway or a closed airport, convective SIGMET. The point here is, let's say 05 was all green and you had some hash marks on there. That's telling you you've got an adverse condition. You may want to, no, not may, you should go back and get a full briefing. This is not a substitute for a briefing. This is just at a glance, what do my conditions look like from departure to destination at 5 o'clock? Excuse me. Plan a route. We're all familiar with planning a route. Put in departure, put in your destination, hit the plan a route button, and it will bring up this dialogue. And we, in the next release that's coming out, we have more that are available to the pilots. Recent ATC assigned routes, we monitor ATC routes, the low altitude Victor Airway routes, the FAA preferred routes, and the coded routes. So if you log on today, this is what you would see. You log on in a month or so, you're going to see that list grow. So for this particular example, I picked IFR recent ATC routes, clicked on find routes, and this is what was presented to me. Now, if you're flying from Kennedy over to Chicago, chances are you're going to get one of these routes. So pick one that you're comfortable with and hit the select button, and it brings it back into your flight plan mask. We also tell you the number of flights that have been assigned and the altitudes. We just find the routes. We're not necessarily looking for the altitude that you have in your flight plan. So anyway, again, hit the select button, brings it back in. Along the same vein with IFR flight plans, we have a service. We monitor, again, ATC. When you file an IFR flight plan, if your flight plan is changed by ATC, we get notification of it. We turn that notification around to you, and we'll send you an email or a text message, and we'll let you know that your flight has been modified or changed by ATC. Now, you can do one of two things at that point. You can either call flight service and say, hey, would you please amend my flight plan to X, hit the amend button, everything's good. Or you log on to the website, copy, paste it, hit the amend button, and it's good. What's the benefit of doing that to you IFR pilots? When you call to pick up your, go ahead.
Yeah, you're going to be able to program your long-range planning and have that much done ahead prior to going.
Exactly right. And the biggest benefit is being able to get cleared as filed. So now I'm not sitting in the cockpit writing down my new. So why anybody wouldn't amend their flight plan to the new route, it's questionable. We are implementing something called Easy Amend. In that email that we send you or in that text message that we send you, all you have to do is hit the link and we'll automatically update and amend that flight plan. We're working out the details now with that, and that should be available soon.
On that, you,
Hold on.
So oftentimes I'll go ahead and file my flight plan and get something back that says it's been amended.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's what I expect. So when I ask my clearance, they've got a clearance change and I've already got it down. So is there a real advantage to going back and changing the route of flight to reflect what I can expect?
Only if it happens to change again. I mean, what we're doing is now syncing up our system to the ATC system. And when you modify or update your flight plan, technically you don't have to, but now what flight service has in the system is different than what ATC has in the system. And that's why we're going to implement the Easy Amend button so you guys don't even have to bother with logging back in.
Along those same lines, very seldom do I ever get what I've filed.
Right.
So once I take off, no matter what I've been amended to, I very seldom get that either. So how does that work with flight service?
At that point, I mean, we can only give you what they're sending us. At some point, within 30 minutes of that departure time, we're done. We don't update or we cannot amend. So anything changed within 30 minutes of your departure time doesn't come to us. We're done with that. Now it's something you have to coordinate with ATC. It's out of our system at that point in time. And the other point I want to make and point out is on this particular website, you can amend an IFR flight plan up to 30 minutes prior to departure time. You can't do that on other sites. This is it. I guess the interfaces we have with the ATC systems allow us to do that. Okay, good questions. Thank you. If you're a VFR pilot, we're getting into the age where people are communicating more and more electronically. Less is done by telephone, more is done by websites, text messaging. We seem to be communicating a lot by our thumbs these days and less by phones. Now, for those who like that, I do. We will send you an email or a text message 30 minutes prior to your departure time, and it allows you to activate your flight plan by just touching a button. It'll send a message to flight service. We open up your flight plan. The caution is the second you hit that button, your flight plan's open. So what does that kick off? What does that start? The timer for what? Search and rescue. So if you're still on the ramp and you haven't taxied out yet, don't hit the button. When you're taxiing out and you're at the hold line and you're ready to go, hit the button, throw your pad away or whatever you're doing with it, and you're good to go. On the other end of the flight, 30 minutes prior to your arrival time, we'll send you an email to close your flight plan. You land. What's the first thing we do nowadays? Man, we're opening up our phone, right? I mean, you get out of the car. What's the first thing you do? You take out your phone. Same thing in the airplane. I know I do. You pick up the phone. You want to see if you missed any calls or whatever. Well, there's an email from flight service. Touch the button, and your flight plan is closed. We'll also send you reminders if you want to. You want to set up reminders? We'll send you a reminder 20 minutes after your arrival time. We'll ping you and say, hey, you haven't closed your flight plan yet. Now, if you happen to get that in the cockpit, you have the choice. You can call flight service and amend your flight plan and maybe extend your ETE if you'd like. But anyway, this is easy activate, easy close. It's for VFR flight plans. We've been asked to show pilot history. Pilots are asking, I want to know what I've done over the past X number of days. We give you the ability to pull up your history for 15 days. It shows you all the significant events you do, requesting a nav log, filing flight plans, getting briefings, activating flight plans, closing flight plans. Every action you take will be available to you. And you want to see a briefing that you got, just click on it. You want to see the flight plan that you filed, you click on it. Just giving you the ability to look at your history. I love this feature. I didn't come up with it though. Schedule an email briefing. I'm leaving 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I do all my pre-flight stuff the night before. Everything's good. 6 a.m. I request an email and it gives me a briefing. I look through the briefing. If I'm comfortable with what I see, I'm good to go. If I have any questions, I call flight service. I always call flight service anyway, just to make sure there's no TFRs. That's just standard for me. But
Is this considered a legal briefing?
the young lady asked me, is this a legal briefing? Yes, it is. It contains everything. As long as you request everything that's contained in a briefing, yes.
You mentioned TFRs. Would you have something in there, I mean, to let people know that there are TFRs in certain areas?
Yes, we do. I mean, obviously briefings show you the TFRs that are along your route of flight, when they're going to be active with respect to the time you're departing, If they are active, we show it to you in red. If they're going to be active within 30 minutes, 60 minutes, we show them orange. And then if they're active outside of an hour, it's green. Now, okay, go ahead.
I guess your point was, though, you always check TFRs prior to taking off, so you're absolutely sure what's out there.
Yes, but here's, we're going to get to it right here, okay? Thank you for that lead in. We have a feature called adverse condition alerting. And everything you see in here is there's no extra charge, there's no charge for this stuff. If you sign up for this service, we will send you an email or a text message of any adverse condition that pops up along your route of flight within 2 hours, starting within 2 hours of your departure time. So I'm scheduled to leave at noon, starting at 10 a.m. If a TFR pops up along your route, if a center weather advisory pops up along your route, we will push a notification to you. What's the tip? Typically, if you don't call flight service, you don't know about it, right? We're now proactive. Tell me you want alerts, and I'll send them to you. And they're all listed there. TFR, we include closed and unsafe airports and runways in those alerts. If for some reason MCO Orlando closes, not gonna, but it closes, we would send you an alert if it were in your route of flight. Or Lakeland. Lakeland has just let's say they initiated a pop-up TFR. We would send that to you within 2 hours. If you have a SATCOM device, one of those devices that we talked about, SpiderTrax, Honeywell, and those in cockpit devices, we'll uplink a text message to you letting you know that you have an adverse condition. You could call flight service at that point to get more details. The good thing is we'll never send you something that is actually behind where you are. So we're calculating where you are along your route of flight. I think we go back maybe, a couple miles or a couple minutes to make sure we're not, just in case you're delayed in your route. But we won't send you anything if it's calculated to be behind you. We'll only send you updates or alerts if it's in front of you. And like I said, we'll send you an email. The email has everything in it. Text message, we're limited by number of characters there. So what we try to do is just tell you that you've got an adverse condition like a turb high, AIRMET or whatever. And if you log on to the website, or if you happen to be on the website, we actually tell you that you have alerts along your route. You click on that button and it actually brings up something that looks very similar to the email. Questions? This is a good feature to have. It's a notification of any adverse condition, and we'll just push it to you. And if you don't want it on a particular flight, just deselect the button, and we won't send them to you. It's that simple. Okay, we talked about search and rescue, and the traditional search and rescue starts at 20, 30 minutes past your arrival time. Okay, you're on a 3-hour flight. That's an awful long time to be waiting for someone to start looking for you if something happens an hour into your flight. Well, what we've done, we're working with these manufacturers. You see them down there on the bottom there, SpiderTrax, SkyConnect. If you give them permission, they'll route the positions to us. And under the covers, like I said, I don't want anybody to walk away thinking this is ATC flight following in any way, shape, or form. This is under the covers. The specialists aren't even looking. Specialists know about it when an incident or an occurrence happens. So you're going along, and we're keeping a little breadcrumb trail for your flight. And then all of a sudden, we stop getting a report. What we do is we bring up a display to our flight data specialists, and they start now looking for you. So something could happen an hour into your flight where we're not getting that ping from that device. We'll start looking. Heck of a lot better than waiting 2.5 more hours for someone to start looking. If you're a fixed-wing aircraft and we're getting a ping in the exact same location over and over, not good, unless you're at your destination airport, right? And you're at an altitude that doesn't indicate you're supposed to be at your destination airport. We know exactly where you are because the lat longs are sent to us, and we know your position. We can call and we can launch search and rescue to a known position. So if you're subscribing to these services already, there is no additional charge to have them pipe this stuff over to flight service. So when you activate a VFR flight plan, again, we just monitor your breadcrumbs. We actually had a pilot that went down. He was going to the Fort Worth summit maybe 3 years ago, and he was 2 hours out. And we picked up on his, it stopped and an alert was generated, and we were able to get him, we were able to locate him. So in-flight PIREP submissions. This is really cool. This is neat. Aerovie, the bottom there, you'll see it's a third-party app. It's a free app. You just go down to the App Store and download it. But what it does is it allows you to submit a PIREP while you're airborne. And I'll show you what his front end looks like, the actual app looks like. The top one shows Honeywell Sky Connect. They permit flight PIREPs to be submitted as well. They both come into our system. We validate them, we process them, we put them into our system, but we also send them off to the National Airspace System, so everybody has access to that PIREP. Honeywell Sky Connect, because that's an Iridium-based device, that comes down to us immediately. If the Aerovie app is, if say you're out of cell coverage or you're not connected, you're not on a data plan and you can't connect, it waits until it hits a tower and then it'll send it in. If it happens to be over an hour old, we don't process it. We just throw it. We keep it in our system, but we don't display it to anybody. The middle there shows the app interfacing to one of those third-party vendors. They'll send it to them and they'll downlink it for us, and that's in process right now. But the top, Honeywell Sky Connect, and the bottom, Aerovie, on an app you bring in, that's all functioning right now. We get hundreds of PIREPs this way. It's incredible. This is what the Aerovie screen looks like. Minimal heads down time. That was Brian's goal. That was the Aerovie's goal. He's a pilot, and he just does not want you to take your focus off the glass up front. So the altitude is determined by the GPS. The call sign is automatically in there. The type defaults to now, and then you just touch the conditions. You hit submit, and the PIREP comes down to us. That's it. What you see on the right is actually something that was submitted and then was transmitted back up over XM weather. So the pilot actually saw the PIREP he submitted. So that's full circle stuff. That's pretty cool. Fleets and flying clubs, if you have, and we'll go into this, if you come over, I'll give you a detailed explanation, but we have the ability to, if you have a club or you're in a flying club, one person can maintain a master list of all the aircraft you have in your club and then give all of your members access to those planes just in that one account. So all of your club members don't have to sit there and put all of the aircraft in. An administrator of sorts creates one account and gives permission for the pilots to hit that account, and they can use the aircraft that they have in that account. And we can get into details later if you want. And the last thing I want to show you, UAVs, they're huge, right? I mean, that's the buzz acronym of the decade, right? What we've done is we are now taking all of the unmanned aircraft NOTAMs that are in the system right now, and we're putting them and we're plotting them. You file a flight plan that happens to touch one of these aircraft, these NOTAMs or these airspaces, we will bring them to you in a separate tab in your briefing, and you'll be able to see them. So we took the initiative with the FAA's concurrence. We had to go and get approval. Everything we add in here is created by the pilot. approved by the FAA because we don't want to violate any rules or regulations. So anyway, when you go into the website now, you can see that we have areas for the CONUS, for Hawaii and Alaska. We're broadening that to the Caribbean and areas around us. But the point is, and if someone happens to put in a UAS NOTAM or a UAS area in our website, we also take it and plot it, as you can see in the blowout over there. This one is real. These two were mine. So we treat them the same. We put them in, we graph them, and if you happen to penetrate that area that contains them, we'll notify you. So that's all I'm going to go over today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I think I have a couple minutes, right? All right. And if you want a detailed explanation of any of the features that you saw, or just a general pitch of the website itself, just come over to the Hangar C. But I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have. I have one of the specialists back there, Andy. He can answer flight service station specialist questions for you if you want. So I'm going to throw you under the bus there, Andy.
Joe, I'd like to thank you for that great presentation. It's been very informative. Excuse me, no, thank you very much. Very important.
My pleasure.
Thank you, folks, for coming out. Our next speaker this afternoon, around between 1 and 2, will be the FAA Pilot Proficiency Program regarding the wings by Guy Miner. We'd all love to have you come back out and attend the seminar. I hope all of you are enjoying Sun and Fun, and we'll see you hopefully again soon. Please exit out to the north door. Thank you very much.